Encounter 1, Ohio, Trumbull County. I saw something on Monday night that still has me totally shaken to my very core. I've always loved nature, I love the woods, I love hiking and camping, fishing, I'm really into mycology, so I'm out looking for mushrooms and various types of fungus whenever I get a chance. The weather was absolutely beautiful on Monday for this time of year, so towards evening time I decided to round up some of my walleye gear and head down to an old train trestle crossing the Mahoning River in Niles, Ohio. I'd parked my car about 1.5 miles from the trestle so I could walk the tracks and hit a few other spots along the river on my way down there. By the time I reached the trestle, it was pretty much dark. I was wearing a headlamp at the time, so I had a dependable light source. At this location, there's a lake directly across the river, which the two are connected by a small overhead dam. I was there for 15 minutes when all of a sudden this overwhelming feeling of dread came over me. I switched my headlamp on to turn around to start back up the riverbank, and right behind a big sycamore tree I saw what happened to be a very large animal, kind of kneeling beside or behind it. As I locked my eyes on it, I completely froze. I knew I was definitely seeing something there, but my mind couldn't process it. What I was looking at didn't make any sense. The thing that I kept saying to myself was, animals aren't supposed to look like that. Right as I'm thinking this, it's as if this thing read my mind, stood up, and made itself perfectly visible in the most pretentious way. It almost had this vibe like, yeah, now you see me, you know I'm real, I definitely exist, what are you going to do about it? And as it happened, it kind of hunched over and made its way into the brush. I was out of there like a flash. As soon as my feet hit the tracks, I ran the entire way back to my car without stopping. By the time I reached my car, I couldn't breathe. Both my legs were locked up. I was vomiting, and somewhere in between the encounter and running away, I'd pissed myself. It's early Friday morning now, and I think I've only slept for about 6 or 7 hours altogether. I've been constantly searching YouTube and all kinds of stuff, listening to eyewitness accounts, and it sounds like these things are encountered quite often. I've heard of the Dogman before, but never really took it seriously. Before the night of this encounter, I would always picture a dogman to look like some small, skittish, coyote-looking creature. Man, I love the woods and I love nature. The woods for me was always a safe haven I could venture into to escape stress at work, bills, relationship problems. I could always take a nice long hike, go fishing or foraging, and come home feeling 75% better. Now I feel like I was threatened and kicked out of my second home. The only thing I could keep thinking is, these things aren't supposed to exist. I feel like a terrified little kid who just came face to face with a dreaded monster in the closet. You know, the monster your parents told you, no wait, assured you wasn't real and couldn't hurt you. People need to be made aware of these things. They are as real as it gets, and they are dangerous. Thinking back to what this thing looked like and how it was built, these things are perfectly adapted killing machines. The way the arms and legs looked, it looked like it was perfectly adapted to walk on all fours as well as on 2 legs. It was so quiet and fluent with its movements also. It's not like in the movies where the monster comes charging out of the woods growling and snarling. These things are masters of camouflage, and they utilize the darkness perfectly. I didn't notice the smell from it, probably because the wind was on my back at the time, but it sure smelled me. Its nose was up in the air the whole time of our encounter, just sniffing away. This experience has torn a huge hole in me. Every time I eat, I get nauseous. I can't sleep for more than 20 minutes at a time, and every time I close my eyes, the thing is all I see. I'm trying not to dwell on the fear. I'm trying to accept what I saw and what had happened, but it's hard. I'm really glad I found this group and found a few things on YouTube, so I know I'm not alone. Encounter number 2, Ohio, Akron. In January of 2010, a good friend of mine, Robin V. of Monroe Falls Paranormal Society, contacted me about a rash of sightings of a werewolf-type creature running out of a metro park crossing traffic. Upon talking to witnesses, all of them described it as a werewolf/dogman, and went to the offices of the Metro Park District to ask about the sightings of the dogman that had been reported in their parks. Their comment to me was, "We don't like to talk about it." They're aware that there is something in the park, they're just not sure what it is exactly. I left contact info in case of more sightings. About a week and a half later, I received a call from a friend about a sighting from one of the park rangers. I met up with him the next morning. He stated he was getting back in the vehicle and looked off to the left and seen what appeared to be a dog on all fours. He got into his vehicle, backed up, and when the headlights shined on the dog, it stood up and looked at him for a brief moment and walked away on just 2 feet. The ranger took me to the site where he had seen the creature standing. There were fresh tracks in the snow. I counted 168 tracks coming out of the deep woods to where the creature was standing, and tracks from where it was standing to out of the park across the road. Encounter number 3. Ohio, Lodi. Was in 2001. Me and my daughter heard a high-pitched screamed woman peacock sound. In seconds heard heavy metal moving. This thing was pushing a big air conditioner. Then it jumped on it, swaying back and forth, and it leaped in seconds heard sound again like it was a mile away. This thing was white with long hair and tail, legs short, long as 7 feet, weighed about 400 pounds. It looked like a polar bear, gorilla, man, wolf in one. Reported to Lodi police. Others have seen it too. Reports of this thing 15 years before we'd seen it. Encounter number 4. Ohio, Morrow County. My mother just told me that a few days ago on her way to work at 5 a.m., she saw a red eye shine in the corner of her eye from her headlights. She tried to look at what caused it, but what she saw made her shiver. The creature was about my father's height, 6 feet or more, and had turned toward the cornfield after looking at my mother's vehicle from the side of the road. As she passed it, all she could see was the back end. She described it as a naked man with dark gray or black wolf hair. No tail. After she passed, she kept watching it and saw it turn its head to watch her. But it did not turn its body like a Bigfoot would. Its body was still. She said she saw incredible intelligence, but also felt evil. A few months prior, on my way home from work at around 11:30 p.m., I saw red eye shine, and then a large creature speeded across the road at 3,000 to 4,000 yards ahead of me. It had black fur, a long muzzle with a large head, broad shoulders with what seemed almost like a mane around it. Large and long front and back legs at a strange angle, no tail. When it happened, the first thing that popped into my head was an impossible wolf and wild boar mix. At the time, I didn't know about Dogman, but after learning about him, that's what that creature had to be. This all happened in Morrow County, Ohio. Another sighting happened last week outside of Mount Vernon in Knox County, Ohio, about 35 to 45 miles from our house. Encounter number 5, Southern Ohio. I also sent an email in, but it was spotted in southern Ohio by a close friend of mine at the opposite end of a bridge. It was illuminated by his tail lights and emergency lights. He says he heard a scream like that of a woman, and when he stopped the car to make sure it wasn't his engine, he saw what looked like 2 eyes reflecting light like a coyote or bobcat behind him on the bridge. He says that they then lifted it up by about 4 or 6 feet, and then a humanoid figure started stepping towards him. It was hairless, but it had pointed ears and a snout like a dog, with thin shoulders and gray skin that looked tight around its bones. He says its mind literally could not believe his eyes because he thought it was a real-life werewolf without any hair. Needless to say, he floored it out of there. Appreciate anything you can tell us, and if you got a guy in the area, it would be great. It's pretty close to our hometown. Encounter number 6, Ohio, Logan. I'm hoping you may be able to help. My research partner and me have a bit of a problem with a dogman at his cabin here in southeast Ohio. We have been researching the Ohio grassman for about 2 years together. Well, now we have this dogman really becoming a problem. Since January 3rd of this year, this thing has been pissing on his cabin about 4 feet up in various spots. It's taken a frontal bite out of one of his trees. It's slashed one of them. It hangs out in the wee hours, most nights growling all around his cabin. We have it on video, audio, and trail cam, so we know what we're dealing with. We're just asking for some advice on how to deal with it. In this place where his cabin is a campground that's primarily closed for the winter. There are a handful of year-round residents, but a total of maybe 8. It's opening up for the season now, and we don't want anyone getting hurt. It's more of an upright dog than a wolf. He's getting more aggressive with time. My partner, being an ex-Army Ranger, does not scare easy. But this thing finally wore him out to the point he left his cabin and went back to his homestead to regroup. Our thinking at the moment is to try and take it out. We started on a plan that we think will work, problem being we think there's more than one. There are grass men all around this area. We have them on audio and photos, but neither is deterring the other. Any advice you have would be greatly appreciated. We don't really want to kill it, but it's getting to the point. We also don't want to draw attention to the area. The last thing we want is a bunch of people running around looking for it. Thank you for your time. Encounter number 7, Ohio, Fairfield County. One night I was out in the woods hunting around 1 a.m. and found this weirdly mangled deer carcass near a tree. About 1 hour and 50 minutes later, I was walking back to my truck when I saw that it was shaking violently, so I readied my rifle. Then I saw it was a bear-like creature shaking my truck. It stood up on its hind legs and growled at me before running off into the woods. When I got a look at the creature, it had long arms and its claws were around 3 inches long. It had pointed ears like a German shepherd, muscly shoulders and legs, and a wolf-like snout with a short nub tail. Encounter number 8, Ohio, Logan. Encounter number 8, Ohio, Scioto County. Okay, this took a lot of courage because I've been ridiculed so much for what happened to me. My grandfather owned a cabin. I'm not disclosing the location of it due to the fact I don't want anything to happen to anyone. Anyway, my grandfather's cabin was his way of getting the family together for the holidays so we could have a nice Sunday dinner with all of us. One day, all of a sudden, that all stopped abruptly. He wouldn't allow anyone but himself to visit the cabin we all looked forward to going to and cherished. For years, I would ask him why he was doing that. He never told me why, but when he passed, he left the place to me. I inherited the cabin of my childhood and was ecstatic about it. It was soon after that I realized why he did what he did. I would go out and walk the woods on game trails, which are everywhere. I knew these woods like I know my own home, so I had never had any reason to fear them. It was on one of these walks that I encountered what people call a Dogman. I was walking just like any other time. Nothing was different. It was then, on one of the game trails, I noticed an offshoot, small trail that went only 6 to 7 feet back. I could see that something had bedded down there. I thought it was a deer. I then walked into the bedded area and soon realized that this was an ambush point for whatever made this bedded area, and it was so massive. My arm hair stood erect and a chill literally ran down my spine. I felt as if I was being watched from different vantage points. Since it was nighttime, I had a tracking flashlight in my sidearm, the latter of which I drew and kept at the ready. I genuinely feared for my life about this point. All of a sudden, an ungodly growl was made to my right, about 10 to 15 yards from me, very close indeed. I pissed myself. It was so terrifying. I didn't immediately run, fearing that whatever it was might take me as threatening. I turned and started heading back on the main trail, and when I was about 5 minutes from the back door of my cabin, the thing let out a howl that I swear felt like it went right through my body. I then proceeded to run. As soon as I did, this thing was chasing me. For every 5 steps I took, this thing was taking 1. That's how fast this Dogman was. I heard the sounds of branches being ripped off trees, and I could have sworn I felt the vibrations of it running after me. I barely made it to my cabin and slammed the door, locking the 2 deadbolts and chain lock. I then turned on my spotlight and shined it into the tree line. There were 3 sets of eyes in the tree line that shined vivid yellow with enormous black pupils. I felt as if the thing could read my mind, but I'm not sure it could. All I know is that I'm alive and have since heard them many times, but I don't take night hikes anymore and haven't for years. Encounter number 9, Ohio, Clinton County. I was driving my girlfriend home from work. Both of us lived in a suburb of our small town, so the drive from our workplace is relatively short. The only off thing about our encounter was the fact we saw it in a suburb, as opposed to the wooded or rural areas like other encounters. The moon was full, so we had a lot of light to see, but there were so many mature trees in the yards of the houses surrounding the road we were driving on. All we saw was a large black blur, moving very fast, almost as fast as a greyhound, at full speed. The length of the blur made me estimate it to be 6 to 7 feet. Both of us were very shaken by the experience and headed home immediately. When we got home, my girlfriend and I recanted our experience with her family, who laughed at us for telling them we had seen such a thing. They brushed it off as a tall tale and went on with their nightly activities. My girlfriend's 2 younger siblings were planning on playing a game called Manhunt. It's pretty much just like hide and seek. When the 2 of them headed out, not even 2 minutes after they walked out the door, they were both bolted in, clearly upset and shaken. They both said they saw exactly what my girlfriend and I saw, but when they saw it, it was walking on its hind legs under a street lamp. Because of that, they got a clearer view of it. They said it was dog-like and was walking on its hind legs on the street. After hearing that, we all as a group of witnesses headed out in my car to search for the beast and to warn the other kids playing manhunt about the beast. My girlfriend's siblings had stopped playing manhunt after their experience, and now that we all have a name to what we saw, we all are more shaken, wondering if it'll be back. Encounter number 10, Ohio, Trotwood. I'm so frightened right now, and it's hard to put these words down. I had to take a quick break. My encounter may seem mild compared to others, but it still physically shakes me to my core on a hot summer night in August of '92. Me, my mom and dad, and 2 of my brothers decided we would get a Papa John's pizza and head to the Dixie Twin Drive-In movie theater. It's 21st, our payday family ritual. I have another older brother, but he had moved out. After finishing our pizza and movies, we headed out, but Daddy decided to take a drive, so we detoured to another part of town. We ended up in Shiloh Springs Road in what you call Trotwood, Ohio, a suburb of Dayton. As we cruised along, enjoying our latest night ride, noticed that there were no cars in front of us or behind us. It was a little eerie and dead silent. As Daddy drove up the road, a little more information was looking out of the rear window and heard him say, "What?" I turned around to look out the front windshield, and I was in horror, astonished, paralyzed. There aren't enough terrible words to describe the level of fear we were going through. He slowed to a complete stop. The headlights on our '79 Buick had caught this tall, gray, stringy-haired gray thing with pointed ears and some kind of muzzle and yellow sort of glowing, piercing eyes that made me feel like an ant. I never felt so inferior in my life. He crossed a 2-lane road and disappeared into the woods in 3 steps, but not before looking through us like he wanted us to die. I felt pure hatred coming from this beast, and he was mad at us for looking at him. I keep seeing him, but I honestly don't see him. I guess I just felt that it was male. He could have smashed through our car and destroyed our entire family. I've seen my beloved daddy scared twice in his life, and both times it was because he felt his death was coming. May he rest in peace. This thing had a face, not just an animal face. It was like he was smart. He was walking, and he owned us for those few minutes. Finally, my mom said, "Ronnie, go," and he sped off. I cried for a few moments, but after that, something strange happened. It was like all 5 of us were entranced. We were on some kind of autopilot. We went home, went to bed, and totally blacked the incident out, like you put some spell on us. We never even spoke of it again, but after I became a mother and wife, my husband and I were talking about Bigfoot. I sat up and my memory snapped. I said, "Brandon, I think I saw Bigfoot," and I told him the story. He quickly corrected, saying, No, you didn't see Bigfoot, you saw a werewolf. I will never go camping or enter a forest or woods of any kind, nor do I allow my children to. That thing has supernatural powers, and it let us know with his eyes that we were nothing, and he would kill us in a second. This was 26 years ago, and I still am overcome with emotion and fear. I just want to share in hopes that it would make me feel better, like maybe a weight would be lifted. I doubt it will, though. Thank you so much to anyone who takes the time to read my experience. Encounter number 11, Ohio, Lewisburg. My girlfriend and I had a sighting up Route 40 just north of Brookville. The sun was up still a little before sunset, thin high clouds, so plenty of light. I was driving and she was looking at me as we were going west on 40, just talking, when I saw her eyes go wide, looking past me through my window, and she practically screams, "What is that?" and points across the field we're traveling parallel to. I look to my left and see something huge and black, with a massive upper body running like a bat out of hell along the edge of the woods. She watched it for a good 30 seconds, running along the edge of the woods until we lost sight of it when we passed a house close to the road. She kept going on about it, half panicked and excited, until we got home, about 3 to 4 minutes to the house from the point of the sighting. Finally, we got home, and I asked her what she saw exactly, and she said it was a big black thing that was running faster than any deer or human could move. Big upper body, couldn't see any major detail due to distance across the field. She said it was one of those things, wasn't it? Encounter number 12. A male employee, approximately age 62, of a water treatment facility on the east side of Cincinnati was making a nightly rounded drive to a particular tank and opened a valve. Driving down a rural road dotted with houses, he sees on his right something standing in front of the garage, lit by a bright overhead light. He put his truck in reverse and backed up to get a better look, stopping at the foot of the driveway. The creature was standing about where the SUV is parked on the right. An image on the right shows the light pole directly across from the basketball hoop. I was told there is another light that brightly illuminates up near the garage door, but I could not see it from my vantage point. The driveway is about 50 feet long. These images were shot from inside a car, just like the witness would have seen. I blotted out the house and license plate numbers for privacy of the residents who were not interviewed. I wonder if they have any idea what lurks around their house at night. The witness describes a bizarre creature he estimates to be about the size of a man. It was covered in brown, leathery skin, but had regular animal hair on the head, neck, and chest. He describes a canine head with a long muzzle and pointed ears on top. He reports the legs were dog-like, but the arms appeared man-like. Interestingly, the creature stood in an unusual pose, likening it to the type of yoga position called intense side stretch. The witness said that instead of forming a V shape, as in the woman pictured, the creature's legs formed more of a horseshoe shape. If they were canine-type legs, one could easily see where this would make sense. The creature's arms hung down in front, but I don't know if it was touching the ground or its own foot or what. Eerily, the creature did not move, but eyed the witness with just one eye, keeping its head in profile. The witness reports a sort of sneer on the creature's face, as if to say, "You see me, don't you?" He said the overall feeling about this creature was that it was bad news. He and the creature stared at each other for about a minute, with the creature remaining in place just looking at him. At length, the witness drove off to attend to his duty up the road. When he returned about 8 minutes later, the creature was gone. I was taken to the water tank employees must attend every morning at 4 a.m. As the crow flies, the tank is only about 100 yards from where the sighting took place. This is where the witness was headed at the time of the sighting. The employee comes out here alone every morning at 4 a.m., drives up to the lock gate and opens it, then walks into the enclosure and opens a valve on his tank. This tank. On the right side of the driveway is a dense hedge of trees and honeysuckle. On the other side of the hedge is a small field with outbuilding and parking lot, then the road, and on the opposite side of it, the house where the sighting took place. On the right-hand side of the tower is mostly farmland. One is pretty alone in the dark at this tank. My friend noted that going into the gate to the tank wasn't bad, but coming back your headlights are in your face and it's hard to see. For some time now prior to the sighting, the witness had been expressing his uneasiness coming to this particular location. He said he always feels like something is watching him. I've been assured that this witness is anything but a coward and is actually a bit of a BA type. But he has long been uncomfortable coming here in the dark. The locations of this tank, the water treatment facility, and the sighting are very near a state park and a wildlife area, a lake, a large creek, and a railroad track. Unfortunately, I've yet to get permission from the witness for a direct interview, but I'm still holding out hope. Encounter number 13, Montana, Carbon County. I'm probably the youngest person to come to you about this. I'm 16, grew up here in Montana, and very active in the outdoors. When I was 4 or 5, I lived with my parents in a small town next to the highway. Our house was right next to it, and my room faced a gravel road that went into the highway. It was summer, and we didn't have AC, so I would leave my window open at night so I could stay cool. One night, I woke up and noticed a silhouette standing out my window. My eyes focused, and I saw that it had a furry outline, and these frost blue eyes it was using to look at me. I sat up in my bed, frightened, but I didn't feel the need to yell for my parents or anything. It just kind of stared at me. While looking at it, I saw that it had pointed ears with tufts of fur like lynx have and a muzzle like a German shepherd. It was fairly muscular and was almost resting on my windowsill, like it was leaning up against it. We stared at each other for a good couple of minutes. Then it smiled at me like a dog does, and even tilted its head. It then backed away from my window, walked across my yard to our chain-link fence, and literally stepped over it. I got out of bed to watch this thing as it got down on all fours and ran down the road and across the highway. Listening, I heard it yip and bark while on the other side, which is prairie with a forest. It was almost like it was calling to others. Looking back on this, I felt like maybe it felt like I didn't pose a threat. Maybe I was just curious. Back then, I was just a little kid. Now I'm a lot bigger. I weigh 200, and I'm about 6'7". So I'm thinking if I ever see one of these again, I probably wouldn't get the same reaction. Encounter number 14, Wyoming, Boulder. 8 years ago, my brother John was heading home from his girlfriend's house on a country road outside of Boulder, 11 miles south of Pinedale, Wyoming. It was about 1 or 2 a.m. when he saw what he said was a huge dog traversing down the slope on the south side of the road and commencing to run alongside his pickup. He was driving a 69 to 70 Ford F-150 Highboy, which came from the factory lifted. The The dogman was running with him at 35 to 40 miles per hour. There's a 2 to 3 foot barrow ditch running along the road, and the dogman's head was level with his as he was driving, so John put its head as height at about 7 to 8 feet. It was dark in color with gray or white on its muzzle running from its nose to under its eyes, which were amber in color. He sped up to 45, and the dogman kept up with him, often looking inside the pickup. He said at about 50 miles per hour he lost it, and that's all he would tell me.